Evening had settled over the Federation homeworld, casting the sprawling cityscape in a warm, artificial glow as the busy streets hummed with the lifeblood of a society on the brink of change. In the relative calm of an upscale hovercar, Raxiel sat, taking in the sights of the world he had been removed from for 60 long years. He was dressed in civilian clothes, a stark contrast to his former prison garb, the fabric soft against his skin, almost a reminder of the life he was once part of. Across from him, Lenara and Lansing engaged in a hushed conversation, occasionally glancing his way with a mix of concern and expectation. They were the architects of his newfound role, a former prisoner turned into a key asset in a game of shadows and intelligence. "The streets are busier than I remember," Raxiel noted, his voice carrying a hint of nostalgia. Lenara smiled faintly. "It's rush hour on the Federation homeworld. Life pulses differently here. You'll get used to it again." "I have no doubt," Raxiel replied, his gaze fixed on the passing city lights. "Especially with this little gadget behind my ear," he added, reaching up to feel the implant that was his lifeline to the team, a two-way radio, though unbeknownst to him, it was far more than that. Lansing interjected, "Just remember, it's strictly for communication, no heroics. We need you to be our eyes and ears in there, nothing more." Raxiel gave a wry grin. "After 6 decades in the void, I'm not exactly in the shape for heroics." Lenara's expression grew serious. "We've done a thorough background check on everyone we could tie to Elysium Brews. Staff, patrons, the owner. No significant flags, mostly minor offenses. It's the perfect cover for faction activity." "The ideal hiding place is often in plain sight," Raxiel mused, recalling phrases from his days of rebellion. "The bar should be starting to fill up about now," Lansing said, peering through the hovercar's tinted window at the establishment known as Elysium Brews. "Casual but not too crowded. Ideal for your reintegration." Raxiel nodded, absorbing their words. "I go in, order a drink, maybe strike up a conversation or two, see if anything or anyone familiar stands out." "Exactly," Lenara affirmed. "And if you can steer the topic towards recent events or the faction—" "I know the drill," Raxiel assured her. "Gather information, don't raise suspicion, you'll be listening to every word." Lenara reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're right here with you, every step of the way." Raxiel gave them a curt nod, then opened the hovercar door. As he stepped out, the hum of the city enveloped him, a symphony of sounds and voices he had not heard for decades. He took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill his lungs, and approached the entrance to Elysium Brews. "Raxiel, what's the sound like? Can you hear us?" Lenara's voice crackled through the implant. "Clear as the Torellian bells," he replied, pushing open the door to the bar. As he crossed the threshold, the ambiance of Elysium Brews washed over him. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations, the faint aroma of hops and spirits. It was familiar, yet alien, a piece of his past that felt like a lifetime ago. The door swung shut behind him, and a brief burst of static filled his ear before the line went dead. In the hovercar, Lenara's hand instinctively went to her earpiece, her eyes widening with concern. "Lansing, the comm is down," she said, her voice tense. Lansing's eyes darted to the building schematics on the screen before him. "It's too soon for any kind of interference. The implant should have a range." "Something's blocking it," Lenara cut in, her mind racing through possibilities. Could the faction have tech advanced enough to cut their communication? On the street, the early evening throngs passed by Elysium Brews, oblivious to the drama unfolding within and without. Inside the hovercar, the tension was palpable, but Lenara maintained her composure. "Give it a minute," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "He knows what he's doing. Let's not compromise the mission unless we have to." Lansing nodded, though his hand hovered over the door handle, ready to move at a moment's notice. They would wait for now, trusting in Raxiel's experience and their own preparations. But every second with the line dead was a second too long, and both knew it. As Raxiel stepped into Elysium Brews, the musty scent of aged wood and the tang of stale hops assailed his senses, transporting him back through the decades. The bar was dimly lit, with amber light casting a warm glow over the patrons. The layout was as he remembered, booths lining the walls, the long bar dominating one side of the room, and a small stage that had seen better days in the far corner. His eyes were drawn to the walls, adorned with old photographs that chronicled the history of the patrons who had passed through, a visual narrative of the community that had once been his own. One particular wall drew Raxiel's attention, covered in an array of what appeared at first to be standard-framed photographs. But as he moved, the images shifted, revealing themselves to be holographic displays that activated at a certain angle, a modern touch to an age-old tradition of memorializing the past. The patrons captured in the frames moved with subtle gestures, their smiles flickering with the semblance of life. Among these dynamic portraits, he found himself a holographic echo of a younger Raxiel, animated with the fervent zeal of youth, standing among peers who had once been his confidants in a cause that had consumed their lives. The sight of his past self, a ghost caught in perpetual motion, brought a rush of memories, each one cascading into the next with the clarity of the present. "What'll it be, friend?" The bartender's voice brought Raxiel back to the present. The man behind the counter was new, not one of the old faces Raxiel remembered. Raxiel approached and took a seat at the bar, the leather stool creaking under his weight. "Just a local brew, thanks." The bartender nodded, pouring him a glass of the house ale. As he slid the drink across the counter, his eyes narrowed slightly, taking in Raxiel's appearance. "You look like you've got stories to tell," the bartender remarked, his tone casual but probing. "Don't recognize your face, and I've got a memory for 'em." Raxiel took a sip, the bitter hops grounding him. "You could say I've been away for a while." "Away, huh?" The bartender leaned in, wiping down the bar. "You know, folks who come in here usually are looking to escape or to remember. Which one are you?" Raxiel chuckled, a sound tinged with a sadness he couldn't quite mask. "A bit of both, I suppose. I used to frequent this place a long time ago. Thought I'd see if any of the old crowds still come around." The bartender's eyes sparkled with interest. "An old-timer, then? This place has a way of keeping its claws in people. If you're looking for friends from the past, you might remember a guy named Dukar. Used to be a regular. Still is, on occasion." Raxiel's heart skipped a beat at the name. Dukar, a connection to the faction that had once been as close as family, and just as deadly. "Dukar," Raxiel repeated, rolling the name around his tongue like a familiar but forgotten flavor. "Can't say I remember him, but the name sounds like it belongs to someone I should know." The bartender chuckled, a knowing look in his eye. "He's over there," he said, nodding toward the back of the bar where a solitary figure sat alone, a half-empty glass in front of him. "Keeps to himself mostly, but he's got the respect of everyone here." Raxiel's gaze followed the bartender's gesture, and he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He made to stand up when a voice, aged like fine liquor, cut through the din of the bar. "We were wondering when you'd show up, Raxiel," Dukar called out, his voice steady and sure. "We know about your friends outside. Why don't you come and sit down for a moment?" The room seemed to stand still, and Raxiel felt every eye on him. He turned slowly to face Dukar, his mind racing. How much did they know? What game was Dukar playing? He was suddenly acutely aware of the implant behind his ear, silent and unresponsive, and the team outside that was now blind to his situation. Stunned, Raxiel could only move forward, each step heavy with trepidation. Dukar, a ghost from his past, was the key to the future, and Raxiel was about to sit face to face with history.